Here occurred the frightening and shocking history of Prince Dracula and the woman he loved.
The main reason that I chose Bram Stoker's Dracula was that when I saw this film for the first time, I didn't love it. I didn't really think it was that great. And then when I looked at the critical reception, it got quite high scores. So then I started thinking, well, what am I missing here? Am I the problem? And is this film actually really good? So I wanted to go back and give it another watch. So at the time of recording, over on IMDb, it gets a 7.4 out of 10. And then over on Rotten Tomatoes, the audience give it 79%, and then the critics give it 78%, which are quite decent scores, especially when you compare that to some of the films that we have done before.
It's not one I'd seen before. I'd heard of it. I'd seen it referenced in things. I mean, it's one of those films that any fan of The Simpsons will know that it's been referenced in that sort of thing. I think overall, there's plenty to like in there. It looks amazing. The sets and the costumes are fantastic. It's quite heavy on the practical effects, and I think it creates this really brilliantly gothic world that definitely brings that feel that you get in the book to life. The music's really eerie as well. There's some really great music in there. The cast are really good as well. So you've got Gary Oldman, Anthony Hopkins, Winona Ryder, Keanu Reeves, Tom Waits. At the time, Dracula was known for the Hammer horror, the Christopher Lee, the sort of, the famous Ivan to suck your blood, makes you think of the Count from Sesame Street and all that sort of stuff. And what they did with this was sort of make it more about him as a character, as an entity, rather than a monster.
Join me in eternal life.
The aesthetic of this is the real highlight for me. The props, the costume, the set design, and everything seems to represent something, whether it's the colors, whether it's the shape of something. Performance-wise, I mean, the standout for me was Anthony Hopkins as Van Helsing. He was just absolutely fabulous. He really elevates the energy of the whole thing, and the dynamic of the film and of the scenes just seems to change really quickly. The biggest problem here for me, and that has been widely documented, is Keanu Reeves's performance. It isn't good, and I think getting him to do a British accent wasn't a great idea, and I feel like he was really miscast in this role. I know he was going through some other sort of personal things at the time, which meant that he felt like he couldn't commit himself fully to this, and that maybe that was causing some of the issues. But it is a real letdown, especially when he's alongside someone like Anthony Hopkins, who is really stealing the scene every time he's on screen.
Where do you sort of lie on the rating overall?
I went into it thinking that I thought it was underrated and that I had underrated it, but I don't think that that's the case. And I think my initial reservations about it do still stand. And I think those scores in the high 70s are a little bit high for me. So in a peculiar turn of events in our underrated and underseen podcast, I actually think that Bram Stoker's Dracula is a little bit overrated.
It doesn't happen very often, but there we go.